Welcome to the Conscious Living Podcast, conversations to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. An uplifting and inspiring series of conversations and talks with your host, Jackie Woodside. We are educating minds, empowering lives, and enlightening souls to create a world where love prevails. In this engaging podcast, we deliver exciting, positive, transformative talks and teachings designed to elevate your life. Now, let's join our host, Jackie Woodside, for this week's session.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here with me on the Conscious Living Podcast. I am Jackie Woodside, the founder and the host of this podcast. And I just want to thank you for spending your time with me week after week. I just found out last week that we are, yes, ranked in the top 10% of podcasts across America. And I want to thank you for that. Thank you for your energy and commitment to living life more consciously. So we are here to bring you strategies to live more consciously with time, money, and life, to educate, empower, and enlighten our world. And one of the things I love about doing this podcast is that I get to hang out with people that I really admire. And today I bring to the podcast a friend and a colleague, Debbie Allen. We've collaborated on different things for the past few years. She's an icon. Let's just say it. She is an entrepreneurial icon. She is the world's #1 authority on expert positioning. She's an internationally recognized business growth and market positioning expert. She's written over 10 books. She spoke on stages in 28 different countries and mentors clients from around the world on how to position themselves for more influence and credibility from their expertise. So, Debbie, thank you so much for spending some time with us today on the Conscious Living Podcast. Anything more you want to say about yourself, your career, so our listeners get to know you a bit?
Well, I always love being with you, Jackie. I love what you're doing. I think it makes a big difference. And, sometimes you don't take time to reflect. So I always do that when I'm with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
So I've never been called an icon before. So I guess that's as you're getting older, that's like the term. I'll take it. I like it.
Yeah, no, you are definitely iconic as an entrepreneur. And, we were talking before we got on air about, the place that we both are in life. Let's just say it's not our first trimester of doing this kind of work. We've both been in the game for a long time. You as a business expert and mentor on scaling and branding and identity, and me, of course, as someone who teaches people about living more consciously, living more empowered, living a life of meaning and purpose. And we've both been in the game a long time, which begs the question of what's next, And I know you have some really interesting thoughts about reinventing yourself. Like we said before we got on air, being in the field this long, in business for this long, we've had to reinvent ourselves.
Right.
With the advent of the internet, and then the advent of COVID, and now the post-COVID world. We've got AI right around the corner, or not even around the corner any longer. It's staring us down. So let's dive in with these conversations, Deb, a little bit about the whole notion of reinvention. What does it mean to you? What experience do you have with it?
Well, my experience with it was I looked at reinvention as like when things aren't working anymore. So you're not seeing a growth in your business. It's not continuing to scale. You might be just kind of stagnant. Or you've lost the interest in it. And sometimes that you've lost the interest or the passion because you've been doing it for so long. And it's you that wants to reinvent because you're like, it's not fun anymore. I always say that if it's not fun anymore, I don't want to do it.
If it's not fun, we're not doing it right.
Right. But I also pay attention to the trends, and I'm very much a visionary about looking forward. And part of that is intuitive, in business, and part of it is being in business a long time and watching the trends and seeing them before they show up. So you're not like shocked when it happens. And the only time that shock that happened was something we couldn't control, which was the 2008 financial crisis, which really rocked my business, and COVID. It didn't rock as much because I was already doing multiple income streams by then. But when the financial crisis hit, like people didn't expect it to be that bad or last that long. And at that time, I was a one-trick pony. I was one of the top paid professional women speakers in the world, reached that pinnacle. Like, oh, yay, Jackie, I've reached that, right? And it's like, it just shut me down, like knocked me, down from the knees, like just it was stopped, just like COVID was like that. And then I had to think, well, how can I reinvent myself if there's no business around? And then I thought about it. It was, scary because usually I can turn business on a dime. And when I when other things are around you that is affecting you can't change, that's scary. Because when you can change it, or you can hire a mentor and say, how can I shift and reinvent my business, then you can move quicker.
Yeah.
But I realized that, started doing more research of other countries that were doing business much better than the United States at that time. So I went international, and I turned my business into a 3-year world tour. And 85% of my business was international within 3 months. And it was just shifting my marketing, realizing that there was other ways of doing business. So when I started that, it was like, okay, now I'm out there, I'm getting booked, and I'm keeping my business, my lights on and everything, right?
Yeah.
I had an expensive lifestyle and I had to keep that up. And so then I saw that wasn't, that wasn't going to be sustainable. Like, you can't just get paid like the same amount of money and then travel the world. That wasn't going to last forever. And then I started seeing people speaking and selling, because that's when those like speaker pitch fest was strong. And then I just took everybody's classes, and then I invested heavily into learning it till I mastered it. And that's how I continued the tour. Basically, it was, completely going from highest paid speaker to waiving my fee completely, paying my own travel, because I knew that I could speak and sell. And I had to bomb a bunch of times and lose a bunch of money learning it, but it was the reinvention I knew. And I think that when we shift to a reinvention and we intuitively know that we have to do something differently, we don't just give up. We don't just say, I'm going to, halfway it. I'm going to go all the way in, and I have to master this. And I think that's what's really helped me in my career as an entrepreneur so many years, is like, figure out what you want to do and then master those skills. And
Wow.
then find some other thing you want to do and then master that skill.
Well, Debbie, you're not saying this, but I want to pull some things out from what you're saying. So you were not only just demonstrating reinvention, but you were demonstrating resilience, faith in yourself and in the life, the universe, to kind of stand up and provide, because you were putting in the hours, putting in the work, hard work, grit, vision. There's so many things from what you just said to, taking that in the market crash, 2008, 2009. What was it that propelled you to say, I need to look overseas? How did you get that? Was it, intuition? Did intuition play a role in that? Or was it research? How did that play out?
Well, I knew I was very talented as a speaker, and I knew that there was a need for that. It was just that, and as a higher priced speaker at that time, those corporations are going to cut that budget. But I knew that, like, Australia was trading with Asia. I was always very in tune with world news and what's going on. And then I feel, okay, so they're really strong because they're trading with Asia. And then, started speaking there. And then I started getting asked to speak in United Arab Emirates. So I was doing a lot in the United Arab Emirates, believe it or not. And then Europe. So it just kind of just continued. I would just look for the next opportunity, and and the next opportunity, and they're there. I mean, there's opportunities. If you look at it, you can go anywhere in the world you want to go. If you know how to do a skill of speaking, or you've got a level of expertise, you write your own ticket, right? You can go anywhere in the world you want to go, and somebody's going to say, hey, I want you to be here, right? Especially if you are waiving your fee to go there. I mean, like, oh, they're like, yes. And then they're already doing meetings anyway. So I was kind of like the workshop girl that was the international expert that came in. So they did build the seats for me, and then they allowed me to make an offer at the end. And of course, I shared some of the funds with the host. So it was a win-win-win for everybody. So I just figured it out, like, how could this work? I know that I have talent, and I think everybody listening here, you have talent and you have wisdom, and don't ever doubt that. And that's the thing. When you're going through something hard like this, or you're going through just trying to figure out a reinvention thing, you really got to go to your intuition, your heart, where's that passion again? Because you might be absolutely brilliant at something, and then somebody comes up behind you and either shut your business down some way, or they copy what you're doing, and you got too many copycats. And I pay attention, because I want to be the first on race day. I want to be somebody that's created and launched something unique. I mean, that's what I teach, is how to position yourself as an expert. So that's why I've had to reinvent, because I've been really great at positioning myself. And then other people go, hey, look what she's doing. And they start grabbing it, stealing kind of your information, putting their twist on it. And that just happens in the expert world, Some people do it purposely, some people do it just because they see, oh, this looks like the new trend. So I always want to be ahead of that game. And so I recently had that, as we had this conversation before the podcast, Jackie, was what do I want to do now? I'm really good at helping people position their marketing, find their special thing that they can own, and then put that together in a business. But I've been doing that for 12 years, and it's great, and I love it. But there was something else missing, so I pay attention to what's going on in here.
Yeah.
What is missing? Because if other people are starting to take what I'm doing, I'm paying attention to that, like it's softening my message.
Mhm.
And then what in my heart would I want to do if I didn't even get paid for it?
Yeah.
Like that's, but of course I want to get paid for it because I'm very strategic and business minded, right? So when you think that way, you usually get more money because your passion is there and you do it. And so it's like, what is that thing? And so now I start asking people, what is your brilliance? Dig in there in everything that you've done. What is your absolute brilliance that you can bring to the world? Sometimes we're just spending so much time trying to figure out what our next direction is, and you just got to go inside. And what is that brilliance? And how can I share that brilliance with other people and help them shine? Because, Jack, we also talked about, we've been in this business a long time. As we get older, we want to leave more of a legacy. And my legacy is like help as many people as I possibly can. I came into this business because I wanted to help people be successful. It's no different than it is decades later. And that's how I want to go out of this world, is still knowing that I've left a legacy where other people can take their wisdom and be able to make money from it and be able to learn the skills that, we've both learned.
You're talking such wisdom in terms of living life consciously, Debbie. You've talked about accessing your intuition. You've talked about listening to your heart. You've talked about following your passion, doing what you love to do. You've talked about leaving a legacy and helping other people. So much of how you've run your business, even though you're really iconic as a business expert and an entrepreneurial leader, a lot of what you're talking about is deep-seated wisdom from the conscious living domain. And so I wonder if you can say a little bit more about that, Debbie. Like, how do you access your intuition in business? And, it's clear how it's guided you, that you have reinvented yourself. You have shape-shifted multiple times throughout your career. You're continuing to do so. But how is it? Is it just you get a passing thought and you run with it? How do you access your intuition and how has it guided you?
Well, a lot of people that don't know me personally, they look at me as very, hey, you're business, you're very, business minded, and you're very strategic. And yes, I am. But I've also done a lot of personal development work with some of the top gurus in the country. I mean, we've done a lot of that personal development work, and that helped me be a better consultant, better in business and everything else. So I think that combination of the things that I've done and events that I've attended and experiences I've gone through that are more intuitive, spiritual, you could say, enlightening, that woke me up. So I've been awake ever since. And I think it started with my first personal development coach that I really invested a lot of money in. It was Barbara DeAngelis, who wrote many best-selling books. And Barbara would be on my stages. She was like, she would walk in the room. I was like, oh my gosh, she's like my God. I've read every one of her books. And then I got her to speak at my event. And how I did it is one of the books that was very life-changing for me when I was going through a divorce. It was called Real Moments. And it's somebody might read it and say that's really like kind of basic, right? But at the time it was speaking to me so loudly because I had no idea how stressed I was. I was just going through the motions of the relationship and business and life. And hey, I lived in Scottsdale in a beautiful mansion on a hill. And what else do I need, right? Except I got a terrible relationship with my husband. And you're just going on and thinking nothing's going to change. And then I didn't realize how stressed I was. And I started reading that book because obviously you pick up a book, you listen to a podcast, whatever that is, and it speaks so directly to you that you're just shaken. And so as I was reading that book, of course, my husband at the time thought that was absolutely ridiculous. What a stupid thing, real moments, right? And so like about a week later, he just said, I want a divorce. And I was like, well, yeah, we're not getting along that great, but just like out of the blue, like I want a divorce, right? So that was like how it ended, like that quickly, like
That's a
bam.
real moment, right?
And the real moment, Jackie, was I didn't say, "Oh, I love you. No, I don't want to be divorced." I said, "I don't want to be divorced." And then it was like, what did I just say? I didn't say I want to be with you. I love you. It was like I was just living in the moment of what was going on. And so when I left this beautiful home, my husband was a custom home builder in Scottsdale, and left the home, and I rented a little 700 square foot apartment with rental furniture because he was really crazy and I didn't want to go there. And so I didn't take anything, some few personal belongings, rented furniture, and moved into this little tiny apartment. And before I could get the apartment, though, I had to move in with my mom. Like, oh my gosh, at my age, like moving with my mom, right? I think I was in my 50s. And so I remember my mom and I were going for a walk one day, and I said, "Mom, did you hear that?" She goes, "What?" I said, "Oh my, did you feel that?" She's like thinking I'm crazy, right? And I'm like, Can't you hear the birds singing?" "Yeah, okay, yeah, I hear birds." I said, "Do you feel that wind on your face?" I had not felt that for so long, Jackie. I was so shut down. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So by the time I got that 700 square foot apartment, I was in heaven. Like,
Yeah.
I was free,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I couldn't see it because I was living in that moment. And I think that even kind of brings tears to my eyes now, just thinking that. But those shifts were like, sometimes it is that book or it is a podcast or whatever it is you're listening to. And then you go, wow, I didn't realize that I was just stuck.
Yeah.
And, something gave me a consciousness to wake up and move, shift
Yeah.
my life.
It's it's really stunning what you're saying, Debbie. And again, it is simple, but it's so powerful that the path to conscious living or conscious business decisions or being guided by your intuition is through self-development work. It is through
Mhm.
having the coach and reading the books and doing the time in the chair, if you will, whether it's the chair of your own reading, journaling, prayer, affirmations, or the chair of the therapy office, or the chair with your coach. But I was a therapist for 30 years, and one of the books in my head that I haven't written yet is called Voices from the Chair, because I
Mm.
listened to hundreds of thousands of hours of human beings talk about their
Mm.
struggles.
I want to
And
read that book.
really,
Yes, I do.
thank you. That gives me a little bit more impetus to get to work on it. But you can imagine, listening to people's struggles and their desire to get to the other side of it. And I guess that's one of the things that motivates me, Debbie, is, to have these conversations on my podcast and to do the work that I do, is that the path forward toward a happier, more fulfilling, more content, more successful existence really isn't that hard. But it takes setting aside the notion that you're right, or you're on the right track, or it really does require that sense of pausing, or maybe like you got hit with a cosmic 2x4 of your husband just saying, "Hey, let's get a divorce." Like I said, that was a real moment where he was just speaking some truth. So just speak to that a little bit, Debbie, from your experience, this correlation between making conscious decisions informed by your intuition in your business, in your life, and that process of self-development work.
Yeah, I think that again, I know when I feel I need a shift. And here's the thing, as women get older, and I've heard this recently, it's like, okay, obviously I'm looking older because people are going, "When are you going to retire?" I'm like, what? Like, what do you got to get to a stage? Is that the next thing you do? Not everybody lives their life like that, right?
Exactly.
And I didn't find my love of my life the first time, and I had to go through some really traumatic shifting of, I had two trial husbands. I was single for 20 years, and then I met the love of my life later in
Oh,
life. And that's what got me off the world tour when I met him, and he is just my soulmate. He's amazing. But I mean, I didn't figure it out right away, right? But I also knew, like, I'm not going to get stuck in something that's not right for me. And I think I was evolving so quickly that if you're with somebody, like when you get young, my first husband was like, well, you're evolved, you're not the same person. And then, you keep changing. And so basically it's, to me, I go through first a struggle. Like, if I'm trying to force it, like force an answer. It feels very much like I'm going through a struggle, and then who can I talk to? Should I call my intuitive client? Jennifer, I call her. She's amazing. Like, I have my intuitives that I call. I have people that I reach out to, because your family and people that are close to you, they're trying to protect you. So they don't understand sometimes where you want to go. But you're talking to somebody that knows you, that's not like right in your life every day, involved in it. Then sometimes you get a better perspective from it. I mean, usually the answers you receive are something you already know. You're just
Mhm.
looking for someone to say the same thing that you're thinking, and then
Yeah,
you could go, okay. That's a
right.
kind of crazy thing that I've seen. I don't think anything's given me such a like dramatic shift in something that they've said, like, oh, I never thought of that. I mean, of course you get some of that, but mostly the intuition. We're either ignoring it and we're paying attention to it. So I have been paying attention to it for a good year. And then when you are trying to reinvent yourself, I can reinvent anybody else, like, an hour, like reinvent, figure it out based on what they want, and put it together. Myself, we're so close to it, we don't see the most obvious. So it took me a good year. And when I've done any kind of major transformational reinventions, typically it's about a year, to where I'll do a little shift and a little shift, and then a year it's like, okay, woo, it took off. Okay. So,
Yeah.
successful people make it look easy, but it doesn't just take off like that.
Yeah. I mean, even a year is short, really, for a major reinvention that kind of takes off and takes you in a new direction. So I think that is, again, what I mentioned earlier, your resilience to go through multiple reinventions and keep coming back to it, the confidence that you have to do that. Let me ask you a little bit about that, because I do think that confidence is kind of a prerequisite to
Mhm.
successful reinvention. How did you develop you haven't used that word, so I'm putting it into our narrative, but do you agree with it, first of all? And if you agree with that observation of mine, how did you develop that sense of confidence to go about all of these numerous reinventions?
Yeah, I didn't realize how many people pick up on that, the confidence that I have, and have had it from such a young age. The reason being that is probably a gift that came to me early on in my 20s. My dad was never an entrepreneur, but he started a business when I was 19. And it was a car rental business. And I joined forces, and he gave my brother part of the business, because like he's going to be the guy that takes over, right? And I'm going to be the worker bee. Well, I had to buy into the business. That was fine. I said, I want to own too. I want to be part of this, because it's like the business is going to grow. And so I was an entrepreneur. My first business was buying into that business at age 19. And it was the most insane business situation. If you could put anybody in a young generation, I would love to put anybody in their 20s that wants to be an entrepreneur in that environment that I was in. Like, oh my gosh, we built this business from 5 cars to 250 cars. We were the first business in Northwest Indiana to have mini storage, so that was all new. But the
Oh,
car rental business was so stressful. I mean, we had these phones with these buttons, like 5 buttons, and they would all light up. And then you get a phone call like, okay, I want to rent a storage unit. Okay, I want to rent a car. And then I lived next to Gary, Indiana. That's where I was born, Gary, Indiana, Armpit, USA. And it was a drug war going on in the 70s. It was, you're turning people, I'm in my 20s. I got to turn people down because I got bad credit cards, and these are like thugs. I mean, it was, and we'd have to go repossess rental cars. I mean, so I learned so many lessons. And it was like, do whatever it takes. Like, and I remember, early on in that business, I was probably 20. And this big gentleman came in, and he had a bad credit card. Back then, that's how old I am. They had these books. These credit card numbers are really, really tiny. And there was like the bad credit card people in the book, right? And so
yeah.
you'd look. So it's how embarrassing. Like, it's when you have to stand there and they're looking at your bill now and see if the bill is fake, right? Your
Right.
cash. But now it's like back then, you'd have to look in this thing and look at these numbers, and then you'd find one. And if you cut it and you turn it in, they would give you like $50 or something, which was, I mean, in the 70s, like that's a
Yeah.
big bonus, right? So I'm like, I want that bonus. I want to find these. So this big dude, I'm looking at it and I see he's on the list. And I'm like, well, first of all, I've got some bad news for you. I'm not going to be able to rent you a car, and your credit card is no good. And I go reach for the scissors. And my brother is looking at me like, you're going to get us killed.
Ah,
You're crazy. And I took that thing and I cut it, and my brother's face was like, oh my gosh. And I think, the man, he was like, I think he was so shocked that it was like, what? And luckily he's left. He gotta go. But
Wow.
we had a lot of like, people would they would turn a van back in and it would have bullet holes in it and from drive-by shootings. I mean,
Wow.
it was nuts. It was just nuts. But back then it was just like we were just doing whatever we did to grow a business. And that's why I have the confidence because I mean, I was going to small claims court with files this thick when I was in mid 20s. I mean, I can't believe I did it. I just did it because I didn't want a job.
Right,
I don't
right,
want to go get a job.
right. Wow. So you really cut your teeth in business, from a very
Yeah.
young age.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. And so most people don't have that kind of opportunity. So I'm very thankful for that. I
Yeah.
learned a lot of things that didn't work as well. Like my dad would just start new businesses all the time. He was kind of a gambler with businesses. And then I realized the power of focus is everything. Find out what you want to do, own it, be really great at it, and just stay focused, stay in your path, stay focused. Once you build that stream of income or that business model, then you can create something else. But get that really focused and clear. If you keep trying to start new things all the time or keep moving in different directions, it just takes all the money and the cash flow that you worked for.
I see that in a lot of people that, especially the era that we're living in now is everything is so fast and there's so
Mhm.
much coming at us. People's ability to focus over the long haul, I feel isn't what it used to be. And you are certainly
Mhm.
evidence of the benefit of being able to focus over the long haul. Debbie, if there are people listening to this podcast who are facing some kind of reinvention, they're thinking about it, or maybe they're in the early phase of it, what advice do you have for people about facing a reinvention?
Well, reinvention is change, and most people don't like change, although we know it's inevitable. We have four seasons, right? Unless you live in Arizona, we have one,
You're one, yeah.
maybe two. Nice. That's it. But it's scary because you're trusting your intuition, your gut. But if it makes so much logical sense, there's no thing like I'm creating something new in my business right now, putting out a new brand, a new thing. But I've been doing that for years. I just haven't done it to the way I'm doing it. So I look at everything like, okay, just because you've done it that way for so long doesn't mean it can't be done in a different way where maybe you can work less hours or maybe you can do more personalization with people in your coaching. Maybe they don't want that group class. And so I started paying attention that I'm actually manifesting clients that are higher level. They've already got a very successful business and they want to learn this piece and they want to learn this piece. They want me to hold their hand, but it's not going to be like, I get your wisdom. You don't have to do that much for me, but I really want you to teach me. I want you to be there, see me do it. Right. So I was realizing I want that kind of client. I don't want the group classes anymore so much. I don't, I want people that are going deep dive, that are really going to learn and master the skills that I have. Because I've helped hundreds of people learn how to speak and sell. And out of hundreds of people, there's always that percentage of rock stars that are just killing it. And I guess I want to create more of those rock stars. And the only way to do that is to more deep dive. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I want to go deep dive. I don't want to be as much as the masses as I do. Let's take that handful of really amazing clients and get them to be the rock stars. And so to me, that's the legacy I want to live. That it's like, okay, let's take my absolute brilliance, the thing I've done the most, and do that now. It's not that I'm not still not doing the other things I've been doing with consulting and that or doing online classes and helping everyone. It's just my focus changes a little bit because I think, um, and you would know this too, Jackie, like everybody with coaches, you're listening to this, like we lose our patience after a while. And I'm very selective on the clients that I take. And then when you get some clients, they're just kind of dragging along, or you pick the wrong client once in a while and you think, why am I feel like I'm kind of abused. Like I had a couple of those, like, okay, if I'm paying attention to my intuition, it's going to slap me around.
Yeah.
And sometimes it has to slap me three times before I get it. And it was like, so people are giving me a bunch of money to work with them and doesn't mean that they're even nice. Like,
Mhm.
wait, I don't want a client like that. That's hard to work with. So I usually, I had one recently. I had to call her out and say, I'm going to have to fire you. Like, I don't want to continue. She's like, well, I want to continue working with you. And I said, I think you'd probably be better working with somebody. I'm trying to get rid of her. Right? She's like, And she's like, well, I don't understand. I said, I don't think you're that coachable. And she goes, oh, I'm very coachable. I said, well, let me just tell you this. You're very rude on email. You're very to the point. That might be your personality, but I've been in this business too long to be treated like that. And I said, I want a client that respects me as much as I respect them. And it was like, whoo, took her off guard. I mean, it was like scary to do those conversations. And I've had to have some of those conversations with people I've been in business relationships with, even clients. And I would tell you what I would do if you really want to reinvent, you got to be able to allow barriers around you and stay focused, because people will suck that energy, or they will shift your mind and not let you go through that change. Because at first it's going to be painful, and the pain is really coming from you doubting it or trusting it. It's like the middle of the change is the worst part, because that's where things are being disrupted. And then once you move on the other side of that, you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do that sooner? But I think that's also part of business, is we create barriers for ourselves, what we want to do, what we don't want to do, pay attention. Same thing with clients, or how people treat us in business relationships. And if we don't speak up, and I learned that very early on. I always I am always going to be honest. I am always going to be upfront, maybe even sometimes brutally honest, but that's who I am. Like, people know that I'm not going to screw somebody over. I'm the most honest, open person you can imagine in business. And sometimes you work with people you think are like that, but they're not. But you know what? Every time I look back, Jackie, and you could probably relate to this too, my intuition told me not to take that client or not to work with that business person. And it always is true. It always comes back to bite me if I go forward anyways because of the money or an opportunity. It always comes back.
Yeah. I love what you're saying about, and again, it goes right back to confidence, your clarity in your communication and your ability to be direct. I see as just an incredible asset. I too am a very direct communicator, and sometimes told too direct. And I don't mean to be in any way, negative or critical. I just know, I don't know how to sugarcoat things. But it comes from, similar to you, of just a real clarity about my message. So you have so much clarity about what works in business because you have reinvented yourself multiple times. You have used your intuition as the guiding force in the decision making, and it's been successful. So that does give you a level of confidence, and so that you speak with clarity. So I really appreciate that. Also appreciate that you were just talking about the stages of reinvention, that kind of early on you're testing things out, and then in the mucky middle, where things are a little bit falling apart, you're not sure if it's going to work. And then you said, but if you can get through that, what you find on the other side. So I just want to emphasize that for our listeners as well, that reinvention isn't a one and done. It's a process that sometimes lasts a year, 18 months. In organizations, it can be as much as 3 years to do a massive change, culture change process. But reinvention is possible. And I even believe it's why we're here. So any last thoughts that you want to add on this topic before we wrap up, Debbie?
Well, I mean, you have people listening to you that have the conscious living, or they want to get to that point. And again, I would say the number one thing is trust your intuition more than you think, especially women, and especially people that have been doing anything. You trust it because you've been in this business so long, and it allows you to speak your mind and all of that. But you got to take care of yourself. If you don't speak your mind, you don't stand up for yourself, then it's going to come back to hurt you some way or another. You're not going to be at the highest level of serving others, because as coaches, we teach people to be at their highest power, and you can only be at your highest power if you're truly in intention and you truly are speaking your mind and saying what's true, because you can't help people if you're not honest with them. It's not just to being like, oh, I'm going to take their money and I'll sugarcoat this to let them get through the other side. Because no, you got to sometimes push people, and you got to be some of my clients say it's tough love. You give me my tough love, and I need that. So you decide where you want to be. But I think that honesty, that integrity, it plays through, and that's why I've been in this business for 27 years because my integrity is there, and it's always been, and it's part of my core values. And I think when you are looking at your conscious, being conscious and where you want to go, reinventing yourself, go back to your core values, always stick with them, because when you shift outside of those core values, you're out of intention and you're out of where you really need to be aligned. And so something that the alignment in where you're at right now is not working for you. Just pay attention to that and go back into just reflecting yourself. What is your brilliance? What is that thing that you've done that very few people on this planet have done, or that you're really, really good at, that you could just say, nobody can copy this. This is my thing. That's where you'll be the most successful.
Beautiful. I love it. And, my confidence and clarity and my ability to tap in and use my intuition, it comes from knowing that it works. And I think the same is true for you. So for our listeners today, thinking about reinventing yourselves, listen to what Debbie is saying, that one of the best paths to reinvention is spending that quiet time listening to and having confidence in that still small voice within. Because, similar, Debbie, I've made several reinventions, and each time it's because I followed my intuitive guidance. So I do that because I know it works, and it helps us live a more conscious and meaningful life. So thank you so much for being here with us. I always appreciate our time together, and I feel like I learn from you every single time we talk. So thank you so much for that.
My pleasure. I love it. Thank you.